This is a zip line and it's pinching me. Today on the show, I am joined by ZW Buckley, a Seattle-based game composer with whom I am currently working on an upcoming game called Keyword 2 from City from Naught. ZW has a very interesting resume. We talk about his upcoming opera, his most recent trip to GDC, AI and its potential effect on game audio, and also how to go full psycho in Baldur's Gate. Here's the episode. I could use some of that maybe. Today on the podcast, I am talking to ZW Buckley. I met you at GameSoundCon a long time ago.
That's right.
In Altspace VR. I don't even know if you remember that. It was the pink cowboy hat thing that they had. You were a speaker there.
That's right. They made all the speakers wear the red cowboy hats.
Yeah. Also, your avatar looked exactly like you. And I liked Altspace VR for that reason, that you can kind of like actually recognize people and walk over to them in a virtual space. So that was cool. But it was just funny because you appeared next to me, literally just popped into existence next to me. And I was like, hey. So yeah, I got some kind of like info from your website, which if you're creative with website goals, I highly recommend you go see zwbuckley.com because it's very beautiful. It's looking very nice. You're a fellow audio person. Your recent and eclectic works include a pop soundtrack for the first ever Barbie VR game. Is that right?
That's right. Yeah, it is.
Yeah. The soundtrack for an upcoming dystopian future mystery game, which we'll talk about. I'm also part of that project. And an opera.
Yeah.
One person is doing all those different things. And on top of that, you also do sample packs and Ableton instrument racks and just a whole bunch of projects. Kind of a household name in game audio. So being someone with knowledge kind of bursting out of you, you also do a ton of educating. You teach at Point Blank Music School.
That's correct.
And you have your own private students as well.
I do.
You know all this, but I'm just saying it to you. And you have a ton of experience giving talks at conferences like PAX West, GDC, and GameSoundCon. So thank you for being on my podcast, ZW Buckley.
Thanks. It's quite the introduction. You got the. Nobody else probably needs to listen to anything. Like that's it.
Yeah,
That's it.
I'll see you later. Thanks for being on the podcast. And I know you from working with you, and but also like I just I wanted to research you a little bit. I wanted this podcast episode to sort of complement the one that you did with Akash the Car. For you listeners, Akash the Car is a podcast called Sound Business, and I wrote down what episode number. ZW appears on episode 61 of that podcast, which is from November of last year, so 2023. I wanted to kind of guide it like into a space where we're not repeating too much stuff. But it's funny because the very first episode of this podcast, I talked about that same year that I went to GameSoundCon. Well, I met up with a friend of mine who I worked with on cruise ships, and I also recognized his avatar immediately because he kind of looks like a Viking. And then he introduced me to another friend of mine that I've worked with for years now who appeared on it anyway. It was a very
That's amazing.
eventful conference, but yeah.
When dealing with virtual spaces like that, it's so helpful that like I can be caricaturized with three elements, so long as there's like a glasses, beard, and a bald head. It's like it's me.
It's kind of me upside down, actually.
That's
I can't
really true.
Grow a beard, so like it's What I liked about that too is like you have eye contact with people. It's like this weird social experiment of like because I did another. I think it was the GDC showcase, and they did something similar, but it was in that GatherTown app. And it's like you're a little pixelated guy, and you walk around, and then like you walk up next to somebody and like a Zoom meeting appears basically, so like you're talking to them.
That's really
it's pretty cool.
That is cool.
But like the Altspace VR thing had like you actually could tell, like someone started talking and everybody turns toward them. It was interesting. Anyway, like I said, I wanted to kind of avoid asking the same stuff as Akash's episode, but you wrote an opera that is going to appear in the Seattle Opera House.
Yeah, it is. It's going to premiere this summer for a weekend of performances in June. It's through this really, really cool program they have called Creation Lab. And Seattle Opera is one of what I'm learning to be a number of opera houses in the U.S. that have programs that are meant to like foster new works by artists looking to enter into the field. And I have an acquaintance who was in the program last year, and they posted one Friday last summer about, hey, come see my opera tonight. Performances are free. And so my spouse and I did. And I just remember being so just moved and captivated by the 3 operas that we saw that night. They're short form operas. I was like, oh, wow, I would love to do something like this. And then like, as if like that thought was actually spoken aloud, the host for that evening talked about the program and how folks could apply. And it's one of those programs that are, it feels very funny to say, it's designed for young people. And in the case of Creation Lab, it is for folks between the ages of 18 and 30. And at the time, I was like 6 months out from turning 31, and the deadline was like a month or two for 31. Yeah. And it makes sense when I think about kind of the stereotypes of opera. Totally checks that 30 is young for for what people think of the opera world. So
I feel like that bleeds out into the outside of the opera world too, because I definitely had like a midlife crisis when I turned 30. But yeah,
totally. Well, the nice thing is that my back started hurting at 27, so 30 was nothing.
Just preparing you for it. Perfect.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so I just remember in my application letter laying it on so thick and just being like, "This is my one and only chance to do this. If you don't accept me, I will be too old. So, give it a try." Maybe in not as many words, probably in more words actually. And yeah, thankfully they accepted me, and so
that's probably helped. I mean, it's like, this guy's got the trauma. We gotta get him on board.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. It's like I'm about to
say.
Yeah, and so we're kind of in the middle of the process right now. In fact, just Monday, so just 2 days ago, we had our first workshop with the vocalists, which was really exciting to actually hear this opera that I've been working on for now 4 months, to actually hear it sung for the first time. I tell you, after listening to just like 4 months of general MIDI choir, it was like like going from black and white to Technicolor, like for the first time. I was like, oh my gosh.
Yeah, dude. That's something I remember from just like, Garriton Instruments in Finale, and then like hearing like the top jazz band at my school play the chart I've been working on for a month. Is like, oh my God. I love you guys so much.
It's the best. It's the best. And that has been such an interesting challenge because, you'll probably know where I'm coming from instantly as somebody who also works in games, right? My work as a game composer, I don't show things off to clients or collaborators that like aren't pretty much finished projects. Like even like my demos, like, like I'm at the point that, if I'm sending off a first draft, it's going to be mixed pretty well. It's going to sound, pretty darn close to like a commercially viable recording. Yeah. And like having to, and one of the cool things about this program is that they pair us up with mentors who are like truly like the top dogs of like the American opera scene, which is like amazing. But then when you have to have a meeting with your mentor and play them the general MIDI draft of your opera for the first time as someone who's used to
horrifying
showing off finished recordings, it was the most uncomfortable 20 minutes of my entire life.
Because like you just picture like, and in no way is this ever going to happen, but you're just going like, they're just gonna wince at like the. I don't know if I like that because that's from where we are. Like the actual the instrument they're using is like that's part of the composition process, and like a lot of the times we're using tools that are like they already sound good as we're writing the music. So it's like, I feel that
and
100%.
like if I turn in something that sounds bad in the game world, there's a chance I could get fired. So I was just sitting there. I'm like, oh God,
exactly.
the opera's going to fire me. The opera's going to fire me. Thankfully, spoiler alert, I haven't been fired, which
That's
is
good.
great. I thought that I was going to get fired during this first read through for a totally different reason because it's just that one of the arias, I let myself get like a little indulgent and it just like hops almost without any sort of like rhyme or reason from 5/8 to 7/8 to 9/8 and like back and forth, like
one of those guys.
And the whole opera is about, it is a 20-minute car ride about 3 would-be maybe eco-terrorists who are going, they live in small town Midwest and they're frustrated with getting their voices heard. And so they hatch this plot to blow up a truck stop as to send a message. And the whole 20-minute opera is just the car ride down the highway. We never get out of the car never stops, nothing. And so it enters into these very surrealistic places, and the drama really is about sort of the dialogue and who, without spoiling it, right, like who keeps their nerve, who loses their nerve, and vice versa. And so to mimic that kind of forward motion and intensity at 2 different points in the opera, there are these several minute stretches in which the music will ramp up the key signature by a half step, ramp up the tempo a little bit, and then shave a beat off the time signature. And so it is just like, it's like 1 second we're like, oh, okay, we're in 9/8. Now we're in 4/4. Yeah. Okay, now we're in 7/8. Now we're in, and it just keeps going up. It's boss music, really. Yeah. And so I was like, I believe people can sing this, but I won't know until they sing it. They were amazing. Awesome. I could never sight read like they did. So I'm so excited for once we actually start rehearsing. And so right now then I'm orchestrating it out. So we've been working off piano vocal scores and now I'm orchestrating it, which is also then going to throw another curveball at them because there isn't going to be piano in the final orchestration at all. So they're going to have to just get used to different timbres entirely, but that's the fun
great.
Of working with professionals.
Yeah, man. People who can sight read music, like singing and not playing what I call a crutch in that context is like very impressive to me.
My first introduction to music was as like a classical choral singer, and I did that all through elementary school, high school, and so like I have a frame of reference for the difficulty of what they're doing, especially when it comes to sight reading, because you're right, it's like I don't have a GoPro down my throat that says like, okay, vocal cord this length gets this note, like I wish I did. For that purposes, I feel like it would get complicated as soon as we factored in eating and breathing, but all that to say is I think you're right. It's so challenging to sight read as a vocalist if you're not really well practiced with it.
I love that they're doing that and they're trying to breathe new life into things like that. How was GDC this year? I would like to ask. And I know you did a talk there. Did you also do a Scream?
No. Okay, so I did not know that GD Scream was a thing until I saw people bitching about it online.
Okay, yeah.
And like people were complaining about like, why is there all this screaming? And like my mind was like, great. Okay, cool. Somebody has been like shot in Yerba Buena. Like I went to the worst,
right?
Which is like the most American thought I could have, right? And then people just
North
posted
American,
North America. That's true. Yeah, people just posted the videos of just like 10 million people screaming, and I think it's the funniest thing. Honestly, I wish that, like, I'm surprised that they're like there isn't a tandem event to GD Scream, which is all the game audio people record GD Scream. Like, you know, like I'm surprised there wasn't like a million field recorders and microphones in your
sell it as a library.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, GDC was wonderful and exhausting, as it always is. I only did it for I guess about 4 days. I flew in Tuesday morning and then flew out Friday night. And yeah, it was fun. I made the intentional decision this year to not book 4 million meetings for myself, which I did last year. And that was a really, really good call, because most of the action, it's just sitting on the lawn in the sun in Yerba Buena and talking to people. Yeah. Like that's what it is. And so we had a panel on mental health and remote work for game audio, which was great. I moderated that. So my job was easy. I just asked the tough questions to my brilliant panelists, which I think it was just posted yesterday to the vault for free. So folks can go find that from this year if they're interested in watching it. And then I moderated a roundtable about career development for remote work game audio, which was awesome. It's funny, I've never even participated in a GDC roundtable discussion before, so maybe that should have like disqualified me from moderating one, but they let that slip. And it was just so amazing to essentially facilitate a collective groupthink amongst the 50 or 60 people who participated in it. It was awesome. I want to do more roundtables in the future. Can't recommend it enough. But by Friday afternoon, I was so thoroughly exhausted. Oh, I imagine. Yeah. One day at GDC, it truly, to me, is the equivalent of like 3 days of everyday life. I like the precision packing it into a few days.
Just in the brief time that I've known you, it's like you give all of your energy to whatever you're doing. So it's like, yeah, I can see how that would be taxing.
Honestly, the smartest thing I did old GDC was Wednesday night. I was already feeling tired. And so by like 8 o'clock, I was like, I'm just going to go back to the hotel. And I had a bag of chips and was just laying there in bed watching 2 hours of like Grand Sumo wrestling highlights on NHK World, because my hotel got NHK World. And it was the smartest thing I may have done in 2024 so far.
Decompress.
We'll see. Yeah. Because I normally am the kind of person who like gives everything and then like finds the reserve tank and then drains that too. And I'm trying to be smarter about that. We'll see if I can keep that up.
Well, and it's so hard too, because it's like you want to make the most of it. I'm actually trying to go to Game SoundCon I think it's in September this year, like in person, because like a flight from Vegas to Burbank is pretty cheap. A filmmaker I was working with, he was doing his premiere, and we flew down in the morning and then flew out at night, and so didn't have any luggage. I just went down with my wife and our friend from Vegas also, and it was like getting on the bus and going down the street, except you're on a plane. My question would be, are there things, because you're saying like where the action is hanging out on the lawn, talking to people, which is 100% true. Like people hire people that they know and trust, and you know, I think skill level is a prerequisite, if not just like secondary to, will I like working with this person? So all those connections you make on the lawn are what actually get you hired. So it's like, are there things that you suggest to people, me, that you could do year round, besides just like stalking people on LinkedIn and like, you know, asking them to mentor you or whatever? I don't know. Is there any other like communities and stuff that you would shout out, I guess, on a podcast?
Yeah, I mean, kind of I have so many thoughts related to your question. Because I mean, really, what it boils down to is it's the eternal question of like, how the fuck do I find a job? Like, you know what I mean? Yeah. I think that something that somebody told me, and I wish for the life of me that I could remember who this was, but when I was first getting started in games, is just that you meet people and you make friends with people in this industry with the understanding that it's going to be 1 to 5 years before you work with them. And that is like a statement that has proven to be very true in my own life, for sure. And so I think that the biggest thing is to just build relationships. And I think that, because the hard part, like you said, with just stalking people on LinkedIn, throwing things out there in the middle of nowhere, right? Like, it feels like you're flailing, and that can be really difficult. So I think unless you are organized and have a system to it, you know, then that system exists, of course, to like keep you on track, but it almost exists largely to make you actually feel like you're not wasting all of your time, right? Like, are you in a not weird way, like keeping track and keeping up with all of your contacts, right? Like, are you actually building relationships with these people? Because the game is to just be top of mind. And so, you know, exactly. And so to that, you know, when you think about like communities and stuff, the thing that I see a lot of game audio people doing that I think is a mistake is they join every Slack, they join every Facebook group, they join every Discord group related to games, and then they just decide to lurk. And what I would recommend is like, and I think I did say this in a talk at some point, leave all of them, like, except for one. Like, because it is way better to be like active and participating somewhere than lurking everywhere. And so I'm even, you know, in a process of revisiting that advice myself and like culling the places that I am active and participating in. You know, now that being said, some, you know, if someone's listening to this and looking for some resources and suggestions, a couple of things that come to mind. There's actually a game audio group Google map that if you search like game audio groups of the world, it should come up. That I'm
gonna do that right now.
Yeah, please, by all means. There is there's a little pin on countries and states that then list groups that are there, and then I think Greenland is reserved for online groups. So if you need to find your community or a new community, I think that's a great place to start, honestly. I think that where you can prioritize in person, I think is actually really still immensely worthwhile, but online is equally good. I think the point, though, that I would make is just be present. Like, in person is good because you can't go, I mean, sure, you can not talk to people, but like, you can't like go to a meetup at like a restaurant and then like physically hide in the same way that like you can join a Discord group, mute notifications, and effectively not be there. So
lurk.
Exactly. Yeah. If you lurk in real life, people are gonna be freaked out and sad.
Call the cops.
Yeah, we don't want that.
And I feel like frequency also, like, I think you were kind of getting to that, but like, it isn't just going to GDC once a year and then disappearing for the rest of the year. Like, you have to, like, people have to remember you, you know? Anyone who sees the stuff that I post on LinkedIn, like, I'll comment on things, but I am legitimately like, or there was something yesterday where it was like a VFX artist or a 3D modeler, like, showing how they make bags of chips in a vending machine, just in Blender or whatever, and it was legit like the coolest thing ever. It's more maybe that genuine kind of thing where it's like, if I'm gonna go and scroll on social media, it might as well be LinkedIn. Visibility, I think, is important. I'm trying to look here. So City from Naught, we both you helped me. You put my name forward for to do some sound design for that game. So the studio is City from Naught. The game that we're working on right now is called Keyword 2 Nightfall. Did you work on you worked on the first one, right?
I didn't work on the first one actually.
Or no?
No. But I was pretty much like ground zero on the second one. As soon as they needed audio, I happened to see the call. At that time, they were just looking for sound design, and I saw that because I was still doing sound design at the time, and put together a demo for them, and then started working on it. Yeah,
awesome. And so, was there mutual connections before that, or it was just literally like a job?
Yeah, myself and one of the co-founders, Sala, are both in the same game dev networking group.
Gotcha.
And so she posted it in that group. And we had briefly been acquainted to one another in like a networking call, but there wasn't really a strong relationship before that. It really was just, I think that networking group was small. They didn't do the call like publicly on Twitter. And I was just lucky enough to turn in work that really resonated with the direction that they wanted to go. I don't know if I ever told you, I got to play it at GDC.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, because...
oh, that's right. Yeah, you posted about that. Yeah.
Yeah, it was one of the Best in Play winners this year.
Beautiful.
And so it was demoing
I knew that.
Ontario booth. Yeah, see, I didn't know that until like the week of GDC. I don't know how that escaped me, but and it's so funny that I didn't think to mention that when you're like, how is GDC? Because it was like my favorite part of GDC. It was so cool to have a project that I was working on demoing down in the expo, and it was so cool to see people play it and play it myself. And your sounds were phenomenal.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
It was a level that I did not touch at all. It had none of my original sound design, so I just got to hear everything awesome that you made for it.
Thank you. Well, under your guidance, of course, you gave me a lot of foundation. I liked all the lo-fi stuff you were talking about. No spoilers, but it's sort of like a cyberpunk kind of aesthetic. Thank you for putting my name forward for that, because that was very much like an example, I think, of what we've been talking about, which is like, you knew me from reaching out to you for advice, and you're like, I think you were like, look how hard this guy's working just to try to do it. And it wasn't like I don't think you were, giving me charity at all, because it was, I still had to like apply for it and everything. But
I don't know if I ever mentioned, but it's like I put 3 or 4 names and portfolios forward to them. So you getting the gig is 100% of your own volition.
Well, thank you.
They because they were like, I think the only question they asked me is, who would you like to work with? And I was like, well, I'm not in the habit of suggesting people for jobs that I don't like. So they're all good with me.
Sure.
So I think that really, and I think it does get back to that top of mind thing, because I know a bunch of sound designers, but when they were asking for, sound designers who do sci-fi and sounds that are at a AAA level, and in particular at that time they were asking for weapons experience or an interest in doing weapons, like I had 3 people actually almost right away who came to mind, because that was the work that they were showing off, and that it's that visibility. It came top of mind, it's like you have to show off the work that you know how to make and that you want to make, because that's what makes you distinctive. So which is so funny, because I'm saying all of that, but my portfolio at no point beforehand ever had what City from Naught has been asking me to compose. So sometimes these situations can be really surprising and emergent as well, which is
and there's all the luck part of it. I got lucky because I think that I had just done like this like No Man's Sky redesign thing, and I was kind of like in sci-fi mode when I was like giving them stuff to look at. So it was just like right time, right place kind of thing. But it's just yeah. So anyway, I'm super excited to dive back into that. We've had kind of an interim, but now they're kind of ready for audio soon. So
you're like my canary in the coal mine.
Yeah,
like
sure.
If they call you up for sound effects, and that means the clock starts ticking until they call me for music. Yeah. So I love that.
Just watch Discord, man.
Exactly.
So let me roll these two questions into one, and then I'll have one last question after that. The state of the industry, specifically, do you think that AI and how it's affecting basically the entire entertainment industry right now, from writing to art to everything, specifically audio, do you have any predictions of like how that might affect our industry?
Yeah.
I guess? Yeah.
I tend to fall somewhere in the middle on things like this.
Okay.
I don't think AI is just going to completely destroy the industry. What I feel confident in saying that AI is going to do as far as music and audio goes is that it's going to, with absolute certainty, make all of those frustrating would-be, I'm going to call them game dev cosplayers, and I'll unpack that. I think it's going to fill their needs more than anything else. Okay. So by game dev cosplayers, I mean anybody who's starting out and hunting for gigs, working in game audio, maybe before they get the lay of their industry. There is always, it's like a rite of passage in which someone wants to, quote unquote, hire you to provide audio for their game. Mm-hmm. And then they inevitably send a laughing emoji when you send rates, right? Like nothing about it is professional. My sort of qualifier of like what makes somebody a professional game dev is based less on skill and based more on how they treat their colleagues, because nobody who, and whatever, there are people, of course, who get jobs in this industry, frankly, very high up, who are like massive assholes, right? But like, I think those people who inherently do not want to value the work of artists and other developers, they're the people who are begging for AI. And I think that it's fine. It's going to make it look like AI's sucking up a bunch of the work, but in reality, it's not at all. Much in the same way how when somebody puts a call for composers for their game in a Twitter post, all of a sudden you have 10 million people commenting on that post, and it makes it look like there are a ton of composers working in games. Right. Whereas like commenting, hey, I've got some music, let's chat, is the easiest thing to do, which means that the most people will do it. It skews the look. The number of people who have all the skills required to actually like work at a professional level in game audio, it is large, but it's not as large as people think it is. And so I think AI in the whole like creating stuff in that regards, it's going to satisfy those people. I don't actually see it having as large of an impact on the professional work as I think people do think it's going to.
Hi there, it's your host here with a quick correction on the next part coming up. Mr. Buckley refers to a Supreme Court case involving the Andy Warhol Foundation, but mistakenly said Leibowitz instead of Goldsmith, so you'll hear my voice awkwardly shoehorned into the next section several times to correct this mistake, because I wanted to preserve this part of the conversation and I wanted it to be accurate, and also because I think it's funny and I can do whatever I want because it's my show. Anyway, I've included the link to the summary of that case in the show notes if you wanted to learn more about it. It's Andy Warhol Foundation v. Goldsmith. Okay, bye.
There was a case at the U.S. Supreme Court 6 months to a year ago that really kind of like didn't get much air in the news, just because, you know, it wasn't heinous. And so, you know, the Supreme Court mostly goes for shock value these days, right?
Yeah.
So the Supreme Court ruled in favor of
Goldsmith
against the estate of Andy Warhol
okay.
in a copyright infringement case, because Andy Warhol, famous for making silk screens of various celebrities, made a silk screen from using a photo that
Goldsmith
took of Prince. And they ruled that copyright, derivative works still violate copyright. And it was like a 7-2 ruling. So it was like a very like strong, clear, like this is what's happening.
Yeah.
I remember around the time reading assessments of that, saying that that was really bad for AI, which makes perfect sense because, for those large language learning models, they have to have a pool of training data, which in the case of, a music AI or a sound design AI, it is songs and all of that. And so there's no world in which the stuff produced by AI isn't derivative work. And so I think that is going to really caution these major companies and studios from doing a ton of AI, because there is just so much risk to that. Now, where I think that it does become scary then is when a single entity does own the rights to massive amounts of music or sound that they then have enough scot-free training data.
Right.
And so, I don't know, I think that it's going to be touch and go until there is some form of legislation that requires compensation for being in data sets like that.
Like, and I just look at it, this genie has flown out of the bottle and we're in this weird Wild West of like, look at all this stuff we can do while we're having the debate about, well, actually, and now we're figuring out what our values are in this new paradigm. So it's like, it's just what do you value, I guess.
What's the quote? Like, we're so focused on if we could that we never stopped to think if we should.
Yeah.
Right? Like, that's
Goldblum
very
said
much
that in Jurassic
it's
Park,
very
I
much
think.
the AI energy right now, right?
Yeah.
It's just like, we can do this, and it's never like, but should you?
Yeah, exactly. Everyone's just afraid for the job, but it's like, I guess from where I'm sitting, I'm like, there wasn't any jobs anyway. So I'm just going to continue
the
as
jobs
I was.
were the friends that we made along the way.
To segue into my last question, and we'll end on a high note. I have sort of my happy place, which shifts around. It might be a video game. It might be like coming home and laying on my carpet and letting my cats come over to me. Which I do almost every day because it feels good on my back too, straightens it out. But like, I guess, do you have like a specific happy place right now?
100%. Yeah, my current happy place is hour probably 410 in Baldur's Gate 3.
There you go.
It's like it's almost, which is really funny because I'm on my fourth playthrough. My fourth playthrough is my happy place, but not a very happy place in game. So everyone is rightly praising Baldur's Gate 3 for just how adaptable the game is. Whatever action you take, the game finds a way to keep going. And so there is an origin character in the game that you can play as called the Dark Urge, which is this character that has these very evil, murderous impulses. Okay. So I am doing a Dark Urge run right now. I guess you could say it's shoot first, ask questions later. I want to see if I can make the game struggle at all. What happens if I kill everybody who gives the quests before a quest is given?
Right.
Like, can I actually reach Act 3? Like, if everybody dies?
Is there a genocide achievement in this game?
So I'm going to find out. And so that is currently my happy place.
Genocide in Baldur's Gate 3.
But Faerun is not a very happy place right now. And it's more of a science thing,
Sure.
So hopefully that doesn't make me sound like a crazy man.
Yeah, it's decompressing. As long as it's in the game.
Some people's spines, or their heads from their necks, you could call me the chiropractor, I guess, in this run through. So that has been my happy place for 4 months. But I think this is the swan song. I think I need to get another game. Which Cyberpunk. I feel like I need to play Cyberpunk. I actually think first I'm going to try Fallout 76 because I just finished the Amazon series.
I just finished it last night, actually.
It's amazing.
I loved it. I have
so amazing.
And I have friends that have their doubts about it, but I think
it shouldn't have worked. Oh, it should. When you think about everything that Fallout is on paper, it shouldn't have worked. But they nailed it.
Did you notice
so good.
When he's the brother, he's hacking the computer? It's actually the mini game.
Oh my gosh! I screamed, and my wife was like, "What?" So good.
Well, and the overall tone of it is just this horrible dystopian future, and all these terrible things that humanity has done against this humorous backdrop. Not even just the soundtrack of the juxtaposition of the golden age of America and whatever, but just Fred Armisen hanging out with this guy while he
oh my gosh, it was so funny.
And I'm pretty sure Fred Armisen has some kind of deal with the devil where he's just in every single piece of media I watch, but I have no complaints because I love that guy. Anyway, all right, man. We got it. We absolutely got it. Thank you so much for joining me today. I appreciate the conversation. It's always fantastic.
It's good as always. Yeah.
Awesome. That is a wrap. Big, huge thank you to ZW for joining me. All the links are in the show notes of the episode. Check out ZWBuckley.com if you're looking for a composer, or if you're a creative worker looking for an example of a very polished website, because it looks awesome. I've also linked the GDC Roundtable ZW hosted and the Game Audio local groups map that he mentioned. Also, if you wanted to check out Keyword 2, the game that we're both working on, I've put the Steam page on there, and you can wishlist it if you want. All right, I'm going to leave this episode in an escape pod. Think episode 4, the things that the droids escaped in. Okay, I'm going to go in here. All right, and there we go. I'm going to seal it up so I don't get sucked into space. All right, thank you for joining me. I'll see you in episode 16.
8, 7,
there's a countdown.
6,
I'm sorry.
5, 4,
My bad.
3, 2, 1.
Okay, bye.